Well, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be continuing work on this WD tonight, and we're going to be working on the torque tube and putting some new parts in that and getting that thing rebuilt. So if that's something that you're interested in, stick around because it's coming up. All right, so we got a parts shipment in today, actually over the last couple of days. We got new bearings, lots of seals to go in this torque tube, as well as various other places on the tractor. Seals on the inside, bearing on the shaft. We got oil seals for the rear end, springs for the brakes. Got a needle bearing in there for my input shaft on the transmission. Some brake pins. Lots of goodies. So got a new water pump as well. So it's still wrapped up in there. Lots of gaskets here. So anyway, tonight we're going to focus on the torque tube. I've got it sitting up here on the bench. The torque tube at this point has been completely stripped out. Had some seals I wanted to replace right here on the lever for your hand clutch. And then the hand clutch obviously is there. I want to do some cleaning up on that before I put this thing back together with the shaft. So anyway, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm just going to kind of just jump into this thing. One of the first steps will be taking that bolt out right there, which is already loose. That'll let us to get the shifting fork. It's really not a shifting fork, it's more of an engagement fork for the clutch. Slid off, get the shaft out, and then that gets us to this seal. All right, so we'll go ahead and take the pin out on the inside. Like I said, this has already been broke loose. Get that out of the way, and then this whole mechanism will just pull right out like this. You can see that's where that pin was in. Slide it out like so. There's your two pieces. Get that up out of the way. So we got our seal down here to the side that we're going to be replacing. Take my seal puller. See if I can get that thing out of there. And there she comes. All right. So there's my old seal. All right, got my new seal, and it is part number 702-246-44. And that's your Allis number right out of the book. And it's just going to go right in here. So actually we'll slide back in there just a little bit before it starts getting tight. Tap that in place. I can kind of see now why the old one had some stuff in behind that seal. When you look at it down in there, it doesn't actually go all the way back in if you just run it flush with this surface. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to find me a socket that will fit that. I'm going to go ahead and just tap it on back in there so that it butts up against that collar on the back side here where it's machined. So let me find a socket that'll fit, and then we'll drive that in. All right, so I got an 1 1/16 deep well. You don't have to have a deep well, that just gives me some room to grab onto it. I'm just going to slide that on here. And now that is put back in all the way at the end, tight up on the inside, which is where it should be. Everything looks good there. All right, so at this point, I can go ahead and slide my shaft back through and put the shifting fork. I keep calling it shifting fork. It's the fork for the hand clutch. What I want to make sure is that I don't have any kind of burrs or anything right here where that seal is going to be at, or along that shaft, because that whole shaft has to slide through there. So I'm going to just wipe this down, and then I'm going to put some Lucas Assembly Lube on it just so that it's good and slick. I'll coat the seal as well, and then I'll slide this whole shaft right into that. One thing I am going to do before I slide that in, now that that is out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and just wipe down. Kind of see there's just a little bit of crud in there. I'm going to go ahead and wipe all of that inside housing down and make sure I don't have any dirt in there. And that way I know for sure I've got everything cleaned out. It's going to be a lot easier to do it now than it is to try to work around that while it's assembled. So I'll do that next, and then we'll... Okay, so I took a few minutes just to clean up that shaft with the wire wheel on my grinder. I got all the dirt and junk out of here. Then I wiped down the fork portion. Got all that the rest of the way cleaned out. So basically at this point, we're just going to go ahead and put some of the assembly lube on the shaft, inside around the seal, and then back in there as well, where the back side of that shaft's going to go in. And then we'll just slide it into place. So let me get this position where you can see good. All right. A little bit of stuff left over in there, wipe that out as well. Like I said, this Lucas Assembly Lube is my choice of lubricant, but you can use whatever you like. I'm just going to go through here and just make a line, and we'll rub this in around it. Back in here is where that seal is going to be, so I'm going to make sure I get that coated. Doesn't take much. Alright, so that's good. I got my seal. Maybe just a little bit more down in there. On this inside that you can't see, I'm going to go ahead and put some in there. We'll get this started. Alright, there's the edge of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my fork right here, and we'll lube it up as well. And as you know, all this is going to be submerged in oil at some point. But just to make everything slide together nice and easy, I want to get that lubed up. So we'll slide the fork down in like so. Line everything up. Thing just slid in there just so easy. Knock it in just a little bit. I'll get that moved over to where my pin lines up with it. Which is right there. Get the pin back in here. Now it'll self-center with that taper on the end. One thing I did do is I went ahead and put a new set of gloves on. You don't have to, but that way if I picked up any debris on anything, I didn't put it on that shaft when I was handling it. So, right. Okay. So I will tighten that the rest of the way down later. So I got that set in place now. Thing looks really nice with that. So I guess our next step will be the drive gear that sets down in this cavity that will transfer the gear that's on the main shaft down to the PTO. And I got it laying over here. That's this one. I can only go in one way. So let me get the housing flipped over, because we'll have to put that in from the bottom. I'll get it flipped over, then we'll get set back up and go ahead and drop it in place. All right, so our next step is to install the intermediate gear that runs the PTO. And I've turned the torque tube around here so that I can work a little bit easier here on the bench. Here is the gear set. Right here, we got a couple components in there. We've got a thrust washer right here that slides on, and that's going to go up in that cavity right there when we assemble. And then you've got your gears, I guess. And you got to watch inside. You're going to have 2 needle bearings, like so. And then you're going to have another thrust washer right here on the bottom side. And then lastly, if you look inside the torque tube, where all this is going to go together, we've got a set screw right here that will go in this hole right here and lock it in place. So all this will have to be assembled coming up through the back side. You can see it right down there. So I'll have to reach up in there to push the shaft through. All right, so this shaft right there is what I'm working on. I'm just going to tap it. Okay. So it's starting to go much better already. Now I just need to see if my groove is... I'm going to get my groove lined up on the flat side of the shaft. All right, so now we're looking straight down in the top of this thing, and that flat part and that washer is not lined up with my shaft, so I got to tap the shaft back just a little bit because it's got that washer too tight for me to spin. Okay. So now the washer I can spin. See that spinning right there. Now I'm going to look in the end right here, and I'm going to get it spun around until it's on the flat portion of the shaft. What we got? Yeah, see it's hitting right there. We'll rotate that. There we go. So now, see how that slid over that? Now it's setting back. Now I can just tap that right on in. Now I can take this bolt and put it back in there. I'm just going to center up on that hole. I'm just going to put that shaft where it needs to be. Okay, so we've got the drive gear that jumps down to our PTO housing. All right, before I flip this back over to put the main shaft in, I want to go ahead and put my wire through that bolt that we put in. So just thread it through. You thread it around the shaft right here. This part does not spin. And then I'm just going to tighten it up with my pliers, and then I'll cut off any excess that we have, and that will hold that in place if it should start to back off. It won't be able to spin out of there. So anyway, I wanted to just point that out real quick before we move forward. I'll do that, and then we'll go to the main shaft install. All right, so I got the torque tube set up on its end, and that's going to allow us to install a new bearing and 2 new rear seals in that cavity right there. The main shaft, this will be coming from your engine. Here is the gear for the belt pulley. Got a bearing there that was fine, I'm not replacing. Then you got your cam lobes that drive your hydraulic pump. And then on the back side of this, we'll have 2 seals right here. And then the bearing's gonna set down inside that collar. When this shaft is driven in there, it'll butt right up against it. And then lastly, at the end of this will be your clutch. So this piece right here will slide on. That gear runs down and drives your PTO, and then this will bolt up to the clutch itself. So with that said, we're gonna get the 2 new bearings, or the seals, 2 new seals, and this bearing. We're gonna go ahead and get that pressed in to the housing. Once those are in place, then I can slide the shaft down and put it in as well. So go over here to my new parts. Here's my bearing number 700 589 74, and then I got 2 seals at 702 22540, and those will just back up one another, one for the clutch area and then one for the hydraulic area. So let's get camera set up back over there and we'll get these driven in. All right, so I'll put the bearing in first. You can see there's a little collar right there, so this bearing will slide down in until it touches that collared area. All right, that's as big as I got. It's 2 inch. That fills it in a little better. All right, so I'm just going to tap this. All right, we're flush on the other side. All right, so now we got the 2 seals. But we're going to do the same thing to those. Set that one down in there. And use the same setup we did a second ago. That felt like it was at the lip, so let me just look and see. All right, looks good. Second seal. All right, so that went pretty smooth. Lube up the seals. I'm gonna make sure that when that shaft goes in here, we don't have any issues. All right, we're gonna take the shaft. I'm gonna put some Lucas oil on it as well, right where those seals are gonna be. Now I cleaned this up too. You will definitely want to do that. Just took my wire wheel on my grinder and I cleaned that up. So I'll slide this thing in very carefully. All right, so we are to the point where the other bearing is where it's going to start needing to be driven in. Pretty good shape on our seals, just want to be real careful on that. Alright, you could hear the distinct noise difference. That's when we bottomed out. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe and leave a comment below. And stick around for my other videos coming up. Have a good day.